Quiet in here today. Quiet in here today. That's the delay on YouTube.
You know where Isaac's house is? Shirley said that they told him that they're gonna build 178 houses up there. No. There's 30 people's property.
Where at?
And Isaac, Owen.
Oh, okay.
They're gonna build 178 houses up there.
That's just that's Arden Wood, right?
What?
That's Arden Wood. Isn't that wrap up behind him?
I don't know what else up behind. That's a lot of houses.
I think there's more than that going in total. It's not just houses. I think there's apartments going in as well.
I don't know where all these people coming from. Oh, yes. They're all locked down.
Well, thank you, Sandy.
You're welcome. I was gonna break out a song up there, but I didn't want to embarrass you. Today's a special day. It's Bob's birthday.
It's one of these milestone ones too.
It's just a baby.
It's starting to dawn on me that I'm not young anymore. But I was still climbing around the trees yesterday. It's pruning my orchard, and some of it's easier to do inside the tree than it is on a ladder.
Shirley, don't forget. 5 weeks.
Get more wind this afternoon, huh? Supposed to get more wind, high wind this afternoon.
That's what they say.
Yay. So just picked up
The other day was terrible.
Yeah, I know it was.
It was terrible.
Well, it was actually good because most of our leaves blew away.
Well,
We never had as many
pine cones that we did, I mean, a ground, a big pine tree was solid. We had them all picked up in there, but didn't do it anymore. We picked them up again, I said, anybody?
I wasn't part of the one house.
For more plantation.
Yeah, we have a lot of work to do up there. We have a lot of work to do up there. There's stuff blown everywhere.
So windy, they couldn't do anything.
It's high down things when they're not all the way built, huh?
What's that?
It's hard to tie down things when they're not all the way built.
With some of it's that, and some of it, things get put in the dumpster, and then it blows out of the dumpster and goes if the winds are high enough. So down towards Randiano's and Joe Plesniak, we've got lots of stuff blown.
I still have a part-time.
Oh, that's the right house.
What's that?
We drive out by there and I have a part-time determine exactly where they're gonna sit that house.
Which house?
Hmm? Out by, up Crab Run.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I was that way just the other day.
I'm the only one, huh?
I never go that way. Well, he was digging stuff over the empty ditch. So I came down East Road and went, that was, I'm never that direction anymore. What are they doing?
Put a lot of money just alone in the bridge. Huh?
Exactly. And then who is that dirt person that drove it?
Graf's building it. Graf.
I know they're building it, but,
Oh, I don't know the owner.
how much fun our neighbor had when he decided to spend 2 years as a bulldozer building a ledge in that hill. And build a house right there. He had some trouble in the, didn't have much of a basement, but he had trouble with that bunch of it. And they had a wall come down.
Mm.
So a wall. And I was down in the basement doing something, I heard a thud, and I didn't, it must be a tree. And then later I go, oh my God, it has a wall in there. That had to be a lot of work to put up the mindset. Killing the little strings, you know, just cut a hole in the hill and build a house.
Yes.
And then that guy, the builder. He's a city builder. Met our neighbor. You ever met
No.
him? Canberra.
This room is really lopsided. Everybody is over there.
Good thing that's not a boat, huh?
That's what I was gonna say. If it's a boat, we're gonna capsize. Huh.
I got the answer. Right side.
From where I'm sitting, you're on the left.
Turn around. That's funny. Yeah. Anybody see the clip on TV of a dog saving his owner's life?
No.
She was walking the dog, he collapsed, she's having a seizure. And the dog went to her, and one car went past, and he went out and sat down to stop the next car. He sat down in front of the car, get up. The person, how cool is that? That's a Lassie call, that's a Lassie.
Yes.
Yep. That's pretty awesome. That must have been a trained service, it must have been not just a dog. Yeah, but it's stood out in traffic.
Yeah.
So everyone of every tongue could read God's word on a page. The truth he would give to all, it would live forever, for every age. From the creation to the revelation and all that is written between, I have discovered from cover to cover the purest of truth can be seen. I believe every word in the Word, every line is divine inspiration. Through the ages his pages brought heaven to earth. I believe, I believe, I believe every word in the Word. I am a Christian on a wonderful mission. God's word tells me what I should do. A modern day disciple who believes that the Bible is holy and totally true. The skeptics deny, the scholars have tried to prove the Bible is flawed. But I proudly stand with a word in my hand, firmly claiming it all. I believe every word in the Word, every line is divine inspiration. Through the ages his pages brought heaven to earth. I believe, I believe, I believe every word in the Word. Believe every word in the Word. Every line is divine inspiration. Through the ages its pages brought heaven to earth. Believe, believe. Through the ages its pages brought heaven to earth. Believe, believe. I believe every word in the Word.
Is there something in your heart between you and the Lord? Are you drifting apart, not as close anymore? There's nothing you can do that he will not forgive. Bring it to the cross, let it die so you can live. Nail it to the cross, get it under the blood. Drown your pain and every stain in the mercy flood. Nail it to the cross, find hope and forgiveness. Kneel at the tree and walk away free. Nail it to the cross. Is there a burden you bear that's got you battered and bound? Struggling for strength, do you long to lay it down? Don't take another step, just kneel where you stand. Lay it at the cross and take the hammer in your hand. Nail it to the cross, get it under the blood. Drown your pain and every stain in the mercy flood. Nail it to the cross, find hope and forgiveness. Kneel at the tree and walk away free. Nail it to the cross, just nail it to the cross. Get it under the blood. Drown your pain and every stain in the mercy flood. Nail it to the cross, find hope and forgiveness. Kneel at the tree and walk away free. Nail it to the cross, nail it to the cross. Find hope and forgiveness. Kneel at the tree and walk away free. Nail it to the cross, nail it to the cross.
Welcome once again. We're at week 12. Let's just open in prayer. Lord, we thank you once again that we have the opportunity to come here and worship you on this Palm Sunday. Help us remember the sacrifice that you have made for us and how important the cross is in the overall gospel message. Help us understand how creation fits into this broad scheme of your plan for us. Amen. Once again, we're going to go back through review. So week 1, we took a look at salvation is not dependent on believing in the literal 6 days, although we young creationists believe the most natural interpretation is 6 days. It's not a creation versus evolution issue. It's really a worldview issue. It's all about God versus no God is the root of all of this. No matter who you're talking to, everyone's biased, whether it's the evolutionist side or the creationist side, they're all cherry picking the facts. So it depends on the lenses you're looking through as to how you're going to interpret the data, because we're all working with the same set of data out there. And believe it or not, evolution is also religion. It takes as much or more faith to believe in the evolutionary model as it does to believe in the creation model. You can't go back and recreate the Big Bang or any other component of ancient times. So all you can do is look at the evidence that's there, and it takes faith to go and believe. Second week, we took a look at the Genesis chronology, and we took a look at the most literal interpretation is a literal 6 days. Evening and morning the first day, evening and morning the second day, etc. There was tremendous redundancy in that I think the author really wanted us to understand. He's talking 6 days, not 6 ages or some other interpretation. He's talking days. It's also very difficult to go and say, you know what, let's just push that into some kind of a gap theory or progressive model, because the days don't line up. light being created well after the Earth. So they don't, the two models don't line up, the evolutionary model versus the young creationist model. Week 3, we took a look at biology and biochemistry. We took a look at the fact of some bacteria and some irreducible complexity. We took a look at the astronomical odds of something accidentally coming about by chance. And that it's just completely impossible for something, even the simplest bacteria, to just go and randomly come about by chance. We did acknowledge that natural selection and mutations do exist, but that they produce, or they don't produce new information, they only degrade the existing information that's there. There's been no known cases of new genetic information being created through the evolutionary process. And even something as simple as male and female. Evolution has no ability to explain how you can get male and female sexes. 4th week, we took a look at astronomy. We took a look at the absolute incredible beauty that God has provided here for us with everything you see. We did talk about the age of the universe and the fact that it has problems from both young creationist and the evolution model. Evolutionists have difficulty with the fact that the universe isn't old enough, even though they're claiming it's 14-some billion years old. It's 92 billion years across, 45 billion light years to one side, and that there's not enough time for that universe to have equalized in temperature the way it has for the evolutionary model. Creationists also have a problem in that, how do you reconcile? We know that the universe is extremely large, and how do you go and reconcile that to thousands of years? So ongoing work is definitely needed in that area to understand that. And I think new physics someday will go and explain it all very elegantly. We just aren't there yet. And we talked about Earth being unique. It's uniquely located, uniquely suited for life. Then we started talking about geology, dating methods. How do you go and date rocks and fossils and all those kind of things? We talked about the basic assumptions that it really depends on the constancy of that rate, the degree to which the system's been isolated from other things, and what were the initial conditions. We took a look at a couple examples, and correct assumptions are the root to all of this. We took a look at Grandpa's hair, and Grandpa's hair indicated that I could be up to 2,000 years old. I am older today, but I'm not that old. So it really depends on those initial assumptions and the constancy and everything else. So if I actually find it funny that the weathermen can't even get it right for 2 days in the future. How the heck are they going to get it right for billions of years in the past? There's too many assumptions. We did talk about tree rings. Tree rings being fairly accurate. Things like Niagara Falls is also a fairly accurate indicator. The Earth can't be millions of years old and still have the falls not have eroded away completely to nothing at this point. Likely it's even younger than they're thinking, but in any event, Niagara Falls definitely supports a young Earth. We talked about radioisometric dating and radioisotopes and half-life decay of uranium and other kinds of radioactive stuff. The problem with that is, again, it comes back to the initial assumptions. You can take a look at something like Mont St. Helens, and even though it's only 40 years past when that occurred, some of the radiometric dating dates the thing at hundreds of thousands of years old. So if they can't get it right for something that young, how can they get it right for millions of years? We talked about carbon-14 dating. That's one of the old go-tos for most of the radiometric or the dating, radiometric dating stuff. But that only works for carbon-based materials, plants, animals, people. And since the half-life is relatively short, it only works for thousands of years, not tens of thousands or millions of years. And we also talked about a very circular argument to the thing. Oftentimes, the rocks are dated by the fossils that are in them, and then the fossils are dated by the rocks that they live in. So you can't have it both ways. It's a very circular argument. The next week we took a look at some additional information. The Earth's magnetic field is decaying. We talked about plate tectonics, the amount of helium in the atmosphere, the amount of salt in the ocean, the amount of sediment in the ocean. All these things tend to support a young Earth view instead of a millions of years view. We then took a look at some of the other evidence that would point to more catastrophic kinds of stuff, like polystrate trees cutting through multiple layers. The fact that you don't, or that there's embedded ripple marks and other things in the soils, meaning something was deposited and solidified very quickly. The lack of bioturbation, that was the roots going down through, or worms disturbing the soils. If the soils had been there for ages, there should have been some disturbance of those things. But instead, what we see on things like the Grand Canyon and all is we see thousands of feet thick layers with no disturbance between those layers for intermediate kinds of soil and growth. And then we also see soft sediment deformation, where you actually see multiple layers that have been kinked and folded, which would mean that those rocks, that soil was very plastic when it actually happened, instead of solidifying and then later somehow being crushed and pushed into position. It wouldn't deform, it would just go and crack and break. Week 7, we talked about death. We talked about why death is even being mentioned in this context, and it's fundamental. If death didn't occur, why did Christ need to come? If it's not a physical death, then why did Christ need to come? So we talked about Genesis, that death is a result of man's sin, and that death is the reason Christ had to come, and all men died, or all men are sinners through Adam's sin. Week 8, we talked about the flood, the tremendous evidence for the flood, not just urban legend kind of stories, but the actual historical evidence for it. We talked about the fact that it was God's judgment for man's sin, and that he was going to wipe man and animals out and start over. We took a look at things like the geologic evidence, like the Grand Canyon, the Scablands, and other places for the fact that there's massive amounts of soil deposition from some catastrophic kind of an event, the flood being the very likely candidate. We also then talked about one of the sources of all this energy could have been some catastrophic plate tectonics that occurred to go and open up the fountains of the deep and produce the amount of heat and water necessary to actually cover the earth. Following week, we took a look at Noah's Ark. We took a look at the ability for, okay, could the Ark actually exist? Is it viable? Could it have been built? Would it have floated? And the answer to those is yes. Could it fit all the animals? The answer is yes. We then, and we did say that Noah didn't have to go out and lasso all the animals. That was God's job. He brought all the animals to the ark. All Noah needed to do was be obedient, build the ark, and they would come. Animal distribution after the flood. So one of the big arguments against creation is, well, you know, how's this gonna, you can't get all these things everywhere anyway. Well, given the ice age that we're gonna talk about next, is that after the flood, the water levels were much lower. Animals could have easily redistributed, animals and people, redistributed and populated the entire earth through much lower sea levels. We talked about fossil evidence. We talked about the races or people groups are a result of natural adaptation of man after man was separated at Babel. Once you start getting a population that is more isolated and not intermingling with the others, they tend to specialize. And that's true of man, and it's true of animals and insects and everything else as well. Human population growth doesn't support an old Earth. It supports a much younger Earth. We talked about the fact that only 1,100 years is necessary for man to get from 2, or in the case of Noah, 8 people, the whole way to where we are today in terms of population. We talked about fossilization being rare, and that many living fossils have been found that contradict the millions of years. There's been many examples of things that were long since considered extinct. They're shown in the fossil record to have existed millions of years ago, and lo and behold, they find that that creature still exists. The fossil record does not support transitions between the species, and it does not support transitional forms from ape to man. A lot of the evolutionists go and use a punctuated equilibrium kind of an argument against that, saying, well, we're in a stable state and then just very quickly, boom, things evolve to the next day, sort of jump. But it's only conjecture. They've got no evidence to support that view whatsoever. And the fossil record should have a lot of fossils in it, an awful lot. If man and animals were here for millions or billions of years, there would be an awful lot of fossils in the ground, and they just don't have them. We talked about the Ice Age, and the Ice Age fitting very neatly with Noah's flood. The fact that what you need for an Ice Age is very warm water and cold continents. Well, you can get that in the events that would have caused the flood, where you've got the massive plate tectonics, you've got tremendous movement of the oceans and the water mixing things, so that you've got Arctic waters at a very warm level. We talked about the fact that it's the same as like Lake Erie. You have lake effect snow, and that's as a result of the warm waters and the air coming across it, picking up that moisture and then depositing it throughout Pennsylvania and other places. Same would have occurred at the end of the Ice Age. The warm oceans would have produced plenty of moisture to then be redistributed as snow because of the colder continents. We talked that the Ice Age probably lasted about 500 years after the flood, and that the mammoths would have been frozen probably at the end of that Ice Age, buried alive through dust storms and other things as the Ice Age was ending. And that this was the period in which man actually migrated, man and animals migrated during this Ice Age period. We think of an Ice Age as tremendously cold. Yes, it's cold, but remember last week or 2 weeks ago, no, it was last week, I guess, we talked about it's only 11 degrees colder on average than the Earth is now. So it's not like it was so unbelievably cold people couldn't live. It was cold enough, though, to produce a lot of snow instead of ice, or instead of rain, and that man could have easily migrated from Russia to, the U.S. and to Canada, things like that. Plenty of opportunity for that migration to occur during that period. So this week we're going to do some application of some of what we've talked about and apply it to other questions that people have had. So what about the dinosaurs? Well, an evolutionist view of the dinosaurs is that they evolved around 235 million years ago. It's amazing how precise they are about some of these things too. It's not 231 million, it's 235 million. They're so good at dating things that they can get it down to plus or minus 5 million years. They ruled the earth for many millions of years. They became extinct around 65 million years ago, and the extinction is often believed to be caused by some kind of an asteroid strike or whatever. There's the claim is an asteroid struck somewhere around the Gulf of Mexico area, and that totally annihilated the dinosaurs and most other living creatures, and then everything had to start all over again because of that destruction. Man evolved around 200,000 years ago, and so there's about a 65 million year gap between dinosaurs and man, so that there was no overlap between dinosaurs and man in the evolutionist view. Well, what about the young Earth creationist view? Obviously, it's going to be a little different. So, young Earth creationists believe dinosaurs were created on day 6 of creation, along with all the other land mammals, about 6,000 years ago. Incidentally, Noah actually got the opportunity to, not Noah, Adam got the opportunity to look at all these dinosaurs and give them names. So they would have been one of the creatures that were put in front of him to name on, during that creation week. Man was created on that 6th day as well. Noah took dinosaurs on the ark with him. So there's no reason not to believe that, it's a couple thousand years after Adam, Noah would have gone and had dinosaurs showing up on the ark with him. And then dinosaurs died out after the flood because of climatic changes. That's the young earth position. So does the Bible mention dinosaurs? Well, it actually doesn't directly mention the word dinosaur anywhere, but there's very good reason for that. The word dinosaur didn't even exist until, 1841 or 42, the word dinosaur was actually coined. And the King James Version of the Bible was translated in 1611. So it was translated a couple hundred years before the actual word was even invented. So it'd be very difficult for the Bible to mention dinosaurs as an actual word. But it does give us a number of other hints. There's this word tannin, commonly translated as dragon or monster in the King James Version. It appears at least 21 times in the Bible. He has swallowed me like a monster. The ones that I have in yellow there are that word tan, translated monster, leviathan, things like that. You broke the heads of the sea monsters on the waters. Leviathan, the fleeing serpent, Leviathan, the twisting serpent, and he will slay the dragon that is in the sea. Can you draw out Leviathan with a flash or with a fishhook, or press down his tongue with a cord? So many times that word is used in the Bible, and it's talking about, translated here, monster, dragon, Leviathan, very likely meaning a dinosaur. Behemoth is another word. Behold, Behemoth, which I made as I made you. He eats grass like an ox. Behold, his strength is behold, his strength in his loins, and his power in the muscles of his belly. He makes his tail stiff like a cedar. The sinews of his thighs are knit together. His bones are tubes of bronze. His limbs like bars of iron. He is the first of the works of God. Let him who made him bring near his sword. That sure sounds a lot like some kind of dinosaur instead of an elephant or a hippopotamus or something else. Many commentators actually have translated or have talked about this behemoth being an elephant or a hippopotamus. Well, if you look at the upper right image there, there's a huge difference between that dinosaur and an elephant and a hippo. And on the bottom right, you see, you're talking about this tail of a cedar. I think God's playing with us. I think he intentionally gave elephants no tail to speak of for these exact reasons. He wanted it perfectly clear that he's not talking about an elephant here. That is no elephant that's in that. Let's go back to the previous one. This, when he's talking in here, his tail stiff like a cedar, that's no elephant. There's no way you can interpret those two. Same thing with a hippo. I think this passage is clearly referring to something that we don't have anymore, some extinct mammal like a dinosaur. What about dragons? The dragons exist. Okay, now I need my glasses. There are stories dating back thousands of years. The story of Gilgamesh encountering a vicious dragon that he slew. Alexander the Great marched into India and found the Indians worshiping huge hissing reptiles. China, we all know, is well known for their dragon stories. England's St. George slew a dragon that lived in a cave. 10th century Irishman had an encounter with what was believed to be a stegosaurus. This Historia Animalium, it's a science book from the 1500s, lists several animals that we now call dinosaurs as still living at that point. And the naturalist Ulysses, somebody or other, recorded an encounter that a peasant had with a dragon. So you don't have to think of dragons as fairy tale. Now, are they these things that you see in cartoons and everything else? Probably not exactly, But the bottom line is they are some kind of a creature that no longer exists, that did exist in the Bible days. And they were different, quite different than what we have today. In Job, his back is made of rows of shields, shut up closely as with a seal. One is so near to the other that no air can come between them. They are joined one to another. They clasp each other and cannot be separated. His sneezings flash forth light, and his eyes are like the eyelids of the dawn. Out of his mouth go flaming torches. Sparks of fire leap forth. Out of his nostrils come forth smoke, as from a boiling pot and burning rushes. His breath kindles coals, and a flame comes forth from his mouth. Remember, Job lived probably during the Ice Age, right after Noah's flood. Dragons, dinosaurs, behemoths, all these monsters would have lived and come off the ark as well. He's describing something here. Now, exactly what it is, we don't know, but it likely fits into this idea of dragons, dinosaurs, whatever. We also have additional evidence, things like Indian cave paintings. There's Indian cave paintings you can see in that. Where are we at here? Nope. Oh, there it is. Right through here, you can see a tail, and then the rest of it doesn't show up real well here, but it's being drawn down on the bottom, being traced. These are actual drawings. There it is. There's the head, body is pretty weak, and tail. That drawing looks eerily similar to dinosaurs. And these are found in Indian cave paintings from, hundreds and hundreds of years ago. It's interesting. There's been a lot of controversy in this area here. They've taken some dinosaur bones, and recently they've done some electron microscope analysis of some of these bones, and they found actual indication of red blood cells in these bones. What startled them is that blood cells are mostly water, and they're scratching their head thinking, how is it possible in a 65 or 100 million, whatever the number they want to pick, 65 million year plus old bone found in the ground? Number one, that it wasn't completely fossilized, which shocked them. But two, that it still had remnants of water in it after 65 million years. So it's interesting. There's a couple of, and these are research. This is out of Discover magazine in 2015. They're stunned with this finding, and the only thing they can think of is, wow, water and all can exist for more than 75 million years, and it's still there. That's their conclusion. Not that maybe our 75 million years is a wrong estimate of the age of this bone. But it's definitely thrown some issue on the evolutionist model of the age of dinosaurs. But it goes right back to what we were talking about earlier. These dating methods are based on so many ridiculous assumptions that I think it's far more likely that the age of those bones is 4,000 years and not 75 million years. And that explains why they can still find this kind of stuff in it. So, conclusion on dinosaurs. They were created on the sixth day of creation. They coexisted with man. They were taken into the ark. They died out many years after leaving the ark. So they would have repopulated, spread around the earth, and died out at some point after that. And the dating methods for dinosaurs and other fossils in general are just very skeptical. What about the Loch Ness Monster? How many people believe the Loch Ness Monster exists? Anybody? Absolutely. So there's actually similar sightings. You've got the Loch Ness Monster, Nessie as he's called, in Scotland in Loch Ness, believed to be like a plesiosaur. Champ is another one in Lake Champlain in New York. Explorers in Africa have found repeated sightings of the same kinds of stuff. So there's been plenty of sightings of these kinds of creatures. Yeah, I'm sorry I'm in your way, Cindy, but I don't have much choice. I got to stay relatively close here. So there's been plenty of sightings through the years of things like Nessie. So does Nessie exist? 25% of Scots believe Nessie exists. They might be dinosaurs. Their existence would certainly be consistent with the young Earth model, and it wouldn't shake my faith one bit if Nessie existed. It would have absolutely no impact on me. I don't have a belief as to whether it exists or not, but it wouldn't surprise me, and it doesn't bother me. If Nessie exists, great. I think it's absolutely great. And I think that it would really, really make the evolutionists scratch their head even more. And it certainly wouldn't hurt the evolutionist model one bit if it does or does not. What about aliens? That's another question. Do aliens exist? How many people believe aliens, ET? Hands? Okay. Well, believe it or not, 2/3 of Americans believe there is life on other planets. 57 believe intelligent life exists somewhere. So a large part of our population believes that aliens exist somewhere, whether it's just non-intelligent beings. A lot of people believe there's some life somewhere. And almost 50-some% believe there's actually intelligent life out there somewhere. But the problem is it's completely inconsistent with the young Earth view. Man was created on day 6. Adam sinned, resulting in death. All man is sinful because of Adam. So aliens then must have descended from Adam, because they would have been life, they would have descended from Adam, they would have therefore had to have sinned. Therefore, they must not have come from Earth first. They would have had to have evolved from somewhere else, but that's not possible because it's inconsistent. How could they have come from Adam and come from somewhere else? They couldn't have come from the Earth. They certainly didn't leave the Earth and go somewhere. So it's a completely inconsistent with a young Earth view. If aliens are discovered, my faith is in serious trouble, because my faith is rooted in a belief that Genesis is correct, that man is sinful as a result of the sin of Adam, and therefore we're all sinful. If they can find aliens from some other place that came here, then once again, we've got multiple paths of life. How is that possible that they could exist and not be sinful through Adam? It's just completely inconsistent with my faith, my belief. What's that? Well, angels wouldn't be, angels exist without a doubt. And angels are in a different realm than we are. Those things could exist. Angels do exist, and angels could become visible to man if God so chose them, absolutely. But that's different than aliens, another living creature. Angels would be on a different realm, and if God wants to incarnate them in a body to present themselves to people like they have in the Bible, he's certainly able to do that, but that's different. What's that? Oh, aliens? Oh, most of the aliens are just, certainly people believe they've seen aliens. People believe they've seen UFOs. And UFOs is a different topic, by the way, because UFO is simply an unidentified flying object. So there's definitely flying objects out there that have been unidentified. That doesn't make them alien craft. That's a different subject. But there's certainly people that have believed they have seen aliens. What they've seen, who knows? And I can't say that I know of any serious evidence that indicates that there's aliens. What about other life, non-intelligent life out there? Some of this is going into the realm of my belief system and not necessarily pure scriptural based, but it's extrapolating from what we've learned into what I believe. And I believe there could be some other life forms out there. But why? What reason would God have if we couldn't interact with them? And the whole idea of creation was God's gift to us for us to enjoy and name these creatures and everything else. So how could God have named the things if they exist somewhere else, and why would he? Who was Cain's wife? That's been an argument that's used a lot, is that, you know, Cain must have married somebody else, so some other person must have been created by God, not just Adam and Eve, and Cain got his wife from somewhere else. Well, no, the reality is Cain's wife was a relative, a very close relative. All people were descendants of Adam. That means Cain's wife was a descendant of Adam as well. Back in those days, there were no restrictions on intermarrying. Those restrictions have been relative recent past in terms of intermarrying, and it has to do with when you intermarry, you end up taking these genetic mutations that we've had through the thousands of years and compounding them much more quickly with intermarriage. Well, those defects didn't exist early on. So there was no forbidden rules against intermarrying. Adam and Eve had other children. Remember, Adam lived to be, what, 930 years old or something? He probably had more than 3 kids. Just a hunch. So there would have been a lot of people alive as a result of Adam and Eve, and then their kids and their kids' kids. So Cain's wife could have been a sister, could have been a niece. It was definitely some close relative of Adam and Eve. There's no reason to believe that that wasn't the case. And if she weren't a relative, it again would be a serious flaw in the creation model. What about the coronavirus? I just threw this one in for the fun of it. Mutation or evolution? We keep hearing about the coronavirus, and now it's evolved into this and it's evolved into that and all this kind of stuff. Well, is it evolving or is it just mutating? Well, first of all, not all viruses are bad. That's the way it is. Some viruses are good. Matter of fact, a lot of viruses, most viruses, 95% of the viruses are actually good. It's when viruses go bad, go south, that they cause people problems. Viruses are actually necessary for digestion and other things in many organisms. And I'm not a biologist to understand all this, but viruses aren't necessarily bad. It's just bad viruses are bad. Coronavirus mutated to cross from animal host to a human host. So it was a virus in animals that came over to humans. It continues to mutate, but it hasn't evolved. It's lost information each time. It becomes more specialized in certain ways, but it hasn't actually changed. It's still coronavirus, just a different form of the coronavirus. There's a lot of arguments that the evolutionists have used through the years to go and support their case. And here's a few that are seriously flawed, fraudulently to that extent, actually. One of the arguments has been similarities of embryos. That if you look at the embryos of, the argument goes that if you look at the embryos of different animals as they're growing in the womb, they all look the same. So you see this top row, that was this Haeckel's drawings of several different embryos. Well, it's a fraud. The real look is what's on the bottom here. That's what the real embryos look like. He drew them like that to make them look like they needed support for the evolution argument. So when you need something, you create a little bit of something. So they created that. If you take a look at the bottom, that's an example of, what embryos look like for each different embryo. Starts on top down to what it result is. And you end up with this. So the bottom line is there was fraud perpetrated way back, starting in the 1860s, right in the Darwin era of going and postulating that these embryos support the evolutionary model. And the reality is it was all a hoax and it isn't true. Peppered moths are another really good one. There's this peppered moths, this is, I believe, from England. They come in light varieties and dark varieties and everywhere in between. And what they found is that during the industrial era, as the smog started to increase, I believe it was in London, the light-colored moths died out and they were all dark-colored moths. And then as they started cleaning up after the Industrial Revolution and the smog and the black starts to go away, lo and behold, the white moths come back and the black moths start disappearing. So they claimed the moths evolved from the white to the dark and then evolved back from the dark back to the light. That's been the argument. This argument has been just filled with problems. First, what you're seeing on many of the photos is that the moths aren't actually even alive. They actually were dead when the study was done, and they pinned them to the tree to showcase what they wanted to show. So they actually took pictures of these moths pinned to the trees to showcase it. What actually happened in reality is that it's no different than the standard natural selection and mutation stuff that we see all the time. These moths exist in light and dark colored varieties, just like, you know, black and white and everything else. Now, what happens is that when the trees got darker because of the soot and smog, the moths were more visible to the birds, so the birds could go and eat all the white ones. So the dark ones survived. So then there's less white ones to repopulate the white ones, and there's more dark ones to repopulate the dark ones. So you get this shift. This shift occurs over time of you see way more dark ones than you do light ones. Then the exact same thing happened the other direction when all of a sudden they start cleaning it up. Then the dark ones become more visible, so the birds eat all the dark ones, and the light ones get, you know, blend in better. As you can see how these things really do blend in. Then the light ones start to blend in more, so they don't get eaten. And then lo and behold, now the population of the light ones is way higher than the populations of the dark ones. The reality is there's no evolution here at all. Number one, the whole study was a fraud. And number two, it's purely just a natural selection kind of deal going on. Vestigial organs, things like male nipples, small wings on birds that can't fly. Evolutionists have always claimed, well, these are just remnants of evolution, that there's no need for any of these things. And this is just evidence of the fact that, well, this bird used to be able to fly and he's evolved into now he can't fly. Well, just because we don't know what something is for doesn't mean that it doesn't have a use. Plenty of organs that we didn't understand before, we now understand their use. So it's not a very good argument. I'll take a few minutes here to go through some arguments that, since young Earth creationists have a lot of good data and a lot of good arguments for creation, you don't need to use arguments that are just questionable or bad, or that are either just wrong or even just even hearsay. One, argument that you've heard before, Darwin recanted on his deathbed. Well, it's just an urban legend. There's no evidence for it, so why use the argument? Whether he did or didn't, it's irrelevant. There's plenty of good stuff. Use that. Moon dust thickness proves a young moon. The reality is, too little's known about the moon dust. It's hard to argue whether it proves young, old, or anything in between. It's just not enough known, so why use it? A Japanese trawler caught a dead plesiosaur near New Zealand in 1977. The truth is, it was just a half-rotted shark. Some of these are arguments that have been used by creationists. I'm just warning you, don't bother using them. Use the good stuff. Women have one more rib than men. It's not true. Woolly mammoths were snap frozen during the flood. No, young Earth creationists believe that occurred during the Ice Age. Second law of thermodynamics began at the fall. Not true. Second law of thermodynamics is universal. It's needed for digestion and a bunch of other things. So it has nothing to do with sin. Archaeopteryx was a fraud. The fossil evidence is genuine. Archaeopteryx was, it's actually just a bird when it all came down to it. Now, Archaeoraptor, a more recent fossil, has been shown to be a fraud. That one's a composite of multiple skeletons, fossils put together to create the creature they wanted to create. This Du Bois renounced the Java Man as missing link and claimed it was just a giant gibbon. Not true. He simply claimed that the brain size and weight were similar to a gibbon, which is a monkey. So he didn't claim anything. So he didn't renounce it. This is an argument that there's this missing link that's been found and that this guy recanted saying, no, it's not a missing link. Well, all he's saying is there's some kind of discrepancy on the brain size to weight ratio that seems odd. The phrase science falsely so called in 1 Timothy refers to evolution. The truth is the Greek word is now retranslated. Words change their meaning through the centuries. So the King James Version, many of the things, and that's one of the reasons you get more modern translations over time, is that words do shift their meaning. And the Greek is now translated as knowledge instead of science. Nothing has changed other than just the usage of the word science has changed. If we evolved from apes, why are there still apes today? This is a horrible argument. If apes would still exist in some other place, they may have evolved here and exist over there. So stay away from arguments like that. NASA computers in calculating position of planets found the missing day in 40 minutes, proving Joshua's long day in Joshua 10 and Hezekiah's sundown movement in 2 Kings. No, you can't, unless you know some absolute dates that you can pinpoint it by, such as eclipses and other things that are, rock solid dates, then you could try to find that missing day. But no, there's not enough actual data to find that stuff. This Paluxy, the river in Paluxy tracks prove that humans and dinosaurs coexisted. This is where they've actually, there's evidence that man and dinosaurs walked together and there's footprints together in the same sediment layer. The evidence is too sketchy to go and rely firmly on it. I actually believe it's probably true, but nonetheless, it's not solid enough evidence to go and use as an argument for creation. So in summary, dinosaurs coexisted with man, not billions or millions of years before man. If Loch Ness Monster, some similar chimp or somebody else existed, it certainly wouldn't shake my faith any. And it doesn't hurt the creationist argument at all. It certainly does hurt the evolutionist model. Aliens, aliens do not exist and is not consistent with creationism. That's my belief. Some of you others may have different opinions. Non-intelligent extraterrestrial life may exist, but why? Why would it? Cain married a close relative, which was not prohibited or harmful at the time. And there is so much good evidence for creation. Don't use weak arguments that we don't have good basis for. I've provided plenty of information over the last several weeks in terms of good stuff for creation, why it's a good argument. Use that instead. Any questions before I indoctrinate you again with another song? Yes, sir.
Well, something that's fascinating me about evidence for dinosaurs coexisting with man. A few years ago, we had a guy from Creation Ministries International here, and he sold a book that documented pictures of carvings in stone from temples in Cambodia, all across Europe, England, of very detailed drawings or carvings of dinosaurs.
Yeah.
Long tails. almost exact replicas of Triceratops. And the statement that was made is, how would these people know what these creatures look like to replicate them really absolutely perfectly if they did not see them?
Yeah, it's true, and it's not just one culture. This cuts across several different cultures, all with very similar kinds of drawings, cave paintings, that kind of stuff. So they would have had no reason to be interacting with each other to come up with these stories and keep them consistent. So it's very good evidence that they actually existed and coexisted with man. Any other final question?
It's not just about the manger where the baby lay. It's not all about the angels who sing for him that day. It's not all about the shepherds or the bright and shining star. It's not all about the wise men who traveled from afar. It's about the cross. It's about my sin. It's about how Jesus came to be born once so that we could be born again. It's about the stone that was rolled away so that you and I could have real life someday. It's about the cross. It's not just about the good things in this life I've done. It's not all about the treasures or the trophies that I've won. It's not about the righteousness that I find within. It's all about his precious blood that saved me from my sin. It's about the cross. It's about my sin. It's about how Jesus came to be born once so that we could be born again. It's about the stone that was rolled away so that you and I could have real life someday. It's about the cross.
I figured that was an appropriate way to have it on Palm Sunday. Next week, we'll be just doing a wrap up, and let's just end in prayer. Lord, we thank you once again that we have the opportunity to come here together and study. We thank you for the sacrifice that your son made on the cross. Help us really understand that it's not just the beginning of the story, but it is that end of the story that really does make a difference. And how creation fits in so neatly into this entire picture. Be with us this coming week. Amen.
Bob, I have to thank you.
Hold on.